pleased to lead an opening prayer. Judy? Not necessarily. Amen. Thank you, Judy. Right. Trust you've had the opportunity to look at the handout. The first item of business is the minutes from our previous meeting. They're on pages 2 through 5 of the handout. Does anybody have any additions or corrections? We got it right. How about that? All right. We will deem those approved as read then. We also have membership requests. You've seen the list of names of those requesting membership on page 6 of the handout. Is there a motion to accept these? All right, I see Mike Bays and David, okay. All right, is there any discussion about that? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, we also have some who have moved on and are requesting letters and other means of dismissal. Do we have a motion that these requests be granted as indicated? Yes, sir. Second? Yes, sir, Lance. All right, any discussion about that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Excellent. All right, next item is the financial report. Call on Matthew Dillingham to fill us in on that.
Good afternoon. We'll start here on page 8 with our monthly budgeted gifts. And what you'll see here is in 2021, we were lagging a little behind 2019 and 20. July is probably going to look pretty similar based on what we've seen so far. We'll know more on Tuesday about that, but it looks like we'll continue to trend a little bit below what the last 2 years have been showing us. With that said, we could go to page 9, and you'll see that at the first top of this section here, you have our quarter results and then our year-to-date budget results. So what you see here through, or just for the second quarter, our receipts missed by about $39,000 and our expenses by about $48,000. So we have a net of $92,000. For the up to this year, right now our budget receipts are at $287,000 below. It's a little bit better than we saw at the end of May, but it looks like based on where we're going with July at this point, we'll probably be back over $300,000 at the end of this month when it comes to our variance. Expenses continue to stay, for the most part, in line with what our expectations are. And we're trying to cut where we can and make sure that we're as responsible as possible. But as of right now, we've been underspending based on what has been budgeted. But as you can see also there, that our expenses are more than our receipts by about $211,000 year to date. To continue on here, the one thing I wanted to highlight in the budget fund cash is related to the detention project. We did a transfer out of surplus of $116,000 to help pay for that project. As you've noted, the project is not done yet. It will hopefully be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're trying to allow as many families and children to take their pictures on those tractors as long as they can. And so we may even put a tithing box out there for that. We'll see. But actually what's happening is we're waiting on the city of Houston right now. We're putting a 24-inch outflow pipe coming from the detention to the city street. And there's a fiber optic cable that's running over the current pipe, and we're waiting for the city of Houston to come in and to figure out how they're going to either move it or stretch it out or do something with it so that we do not break the fiber optic, which I know people would be quite upset if we did, so we're going to not do that. So where we are right now with total expenses for the month of June, we're $12,492 over. Receipts of June exceeded budget by $20,000. So like I said, June was a good month, and it helped us out a little bit, putting us below $300,000 for our budgeted receipts. But July, like I said, it looks like we'll get back to our situation we were in before June. First half of the year, we're $143,000 below budget. Receipts for the first half are $287 below, so we have a net unfavorable right now of $143,000. We can continue on into the next page there to kind of look at it based on departments and ministries. There's a few things I wanted to call out here. A few numbers that you may see that look a little off. One could be personnel. One of those is based on our facilities staff right now. We do have a new facilities director, as we mentioned at the last meeting. But we do not have 2 additional facilities people that we had budgeted for that we typically would have. We had one for a while. He was our longest lasting. I think he was here for about a month and a half. It's pretty exciting. We celebrated when he hit the month thing, but then he left. He actually is going to work on an internship in mechanical engineering, so you can't fault him for that, so that's good for him. But anyways, what you'll see there is that facilities looks higher than it is because of that. And because what we're doing is we're using outsourced facilities service to help us pay for not having personnel on staff to take care of this. The other one I just wanted to point out is student ministries. What that is a timing difference from revenues to expenses based on just the time of year that hit, and that should all equal out and look nice next time we have a meeting. All right. And the final page here on page 11 is our church restricted and donor restricted accounts here. Nothing too crazy or significant to point out here, but just kind of give you an idea of what has been going on. We did get our final number there for pie and cake. You'll see that down there for $65,000 this year, which was a good thing. So that was something we could celebrate. Any questions about the finances that you have in front of you at this point? Mm-hmm.
It's pretty simple. It looks like we've got more of an income problem than we have a spending problem.
Mm-hmm.
Has any stewardship committee or somebody discussed what we might do to fix that?
Ask people to give more. So, I mean, there's.
Is there like a plan that we might go through, a strategy to encourage people, teach people about tithing and stewardship? Is there something in the works there, or
Yeah.
just gonna beg for money every Sunday and be done with it?
Well, I mean, there's conversations about what some possibilities of what we could do to help educate people about the importance of tithing. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that Jeremy and I have talked about multiple times.
Handle that, or would stewardship handle that? Which
It's a mix of the groups. It's something we've had a conversation with. I mean, last year we had a couple lessons on stewardship through the discipleship department. We had a recent video on giving this last Wednesday. There's just other ways we can look at that. And we're working on that with Jeremy and with the stewardship committee.
okay, we're gonna roll something out soon.
I don't have any answer for that right now. All right, is that all? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Matthew. The only other new business I'm aware of is a recommendation from our nominating committee. Call on Lance Jones to make that.
You want me to do it from here? or-
That'll be fine.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So the nominating committee would like to recommend to put Spud Basham back on the missions committee. As most of y'all know, Jeff and Susan Marola moved to North Texas recently. So Jeff left a vacancy on the missions committee, and we're trying to fill that with Spud's name. So that's our nomination for tonight.
All right. Recommendation from a committee carries an automatic second. Is there any discussion? The nomination. Have we talked to him about that? All right. Hearing none, all in favor of the recommendation, please say aye. All opposed? Excellent. The chair is aware of no other new business. Is there anything else to come before the body? If not, then motion, hello, yes, ma'am. Certainly. All right. After we adjourn the formal meeting, yes, ma'am. All right. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Right? Got the motion in a second? All right. All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Excellent. Call on the pastor to bring in the next phase here.
Well, good to see you. So I'll begin with answering your question. We had gone through personnel, dialed in on one candidate for the worship leader position. He was a gentleman out of Georgia, and we had gone through the entire interview process, finalized everything. I had reached out to him basically to say, hey, we want to fly you and your wife in so that you can just look around. And at that was when he decided to withdraw his name from consideration. Call it a guess, but it's a pretty educated guess. I don't know that his wife was ready to move from Georgia to Texas. All of their family was there, and without him explicitly saying it, it's just kind of what it felt like. That said, we never really stopped the process. And so, until somebody's occupying the office, we're not going to stop. And so we turned right back around literally the next day, and I'd had a meeting with another candidate that we're still in discussion with, and in fact, personnel is going to be considering on Tuesday night. So we'll be discussing his profile then. And just depending on how all that goes, we'll be able to fill you in a little bit more on that. So does that help a little bit with where we're at? Yep. So Tuesday night, that's certainly something that you can pray about as we get together. Second, just a couple of other things. One, Jack Allen's memorial will be on Tuesday morning here at 10:30, so I just wanted to speak to that. And so if you have the opportunity to be here, would certainly love to see you here for that. And, not but a few months ago, we had the memorial service of Parker Coogan. Many of you would probably remember that. Yesterday, the Coogan's other son, Alex, died in a tragic accident. And so we just want to keep them in prayer, if you would. So as my phone went off for that one, this family's been through it. And, thankful that they have become an active part of our church. They're here every week, not today, but understandably so. They are taking care of some details. But if you would, just keep Tim and Amy in your prayers. I know that it would mean a lot to them. And then just on our end, we're gonna take care of that family. That is just what we're gonna do. But you can imagine in a few months losing 2 kids. That's tough. So I know that they would appreciate your prayers. So I just wanted to say that as well. But on to other things, and it's not, it's not anything that we're going to be voting on tonight. This is something that we want to have on the front end of a discussion tonight. What I would look to have is a couple of other meetings that are largely informative meetings on what is potentially the next steps for us as a church. That's really all I wanted to do. So tonight it's going to be more on the what we're thinking and the why we're thinking, and then we'll have some other meetings on the how do we do this, how do we pull this off. But to backtrack a little bit and just to fill some of you in on it, we had discussed before the land that we have on North Park and what it is that we're supposed to do with the land over on North Park, behind the Woodridge Parkway area, right? And we had unveiled a plan on kind of a building plan over there that would enhance what we're doing in a lot of things, but including our Upward Sports Ministry. You probably remember what I'm talking about. And we had 3 different meetings that were informative meetings about what that would look like. Well, we also had another flood, and that was after all of those meetings. And after meeting with our group, I said, well, that's going to change everything, isn't it? That would include detention and whatnot. And they're like, yep, it changes pretty much everything. I was like, we're just going to put this down for a bit. And the other reason that we put it down is because I could not, with a clear conscience, go and clear-cut land in an area that had dealt with flooding. I mean, if there are 2 things in Kingwood that you've probably heard of, there are 2 Ds that are the big ones, which is development and drainage. And I just couldn't. I couldn't go over there. I was like, if you want our church to have a bad reputation in this community, let's go start laying trees down. And so we just put it to bed for a little bit, because that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that we love and take care of our community well. That said, I was giving some thought to things. In the original proposal over there, just to clear the land out was going to be somewhere to the tune of about $1.5 million. And what $1.5 million would have is clear land. That's what we would have. And then after that, we would have a multi-phase plan on building. Ultimately, that was going to be somewhere to the tune of about $10 to $12 million, give or take. But after I was thinking about it, and I was talking with Tiny about it, there's another possibility for us, and I just want you to see what the possibility would be. Does that sound good? That's all I want. I want to talk about what the possibility would be, and it would be to develop right where you're sitting. If you go out into the parking lot, and you have the parking, what I call the wrap, and those are the parking spaces that are contiguous to the building, starting over here, wraps all the way around and goes over to the preschool area. Not now, but usually goes over to the preschool area. That'll all be taken care of soon once the detention is fixed. The wrap that goes around the church is really actually where most people park on a Sunday morning. And then if you go out, you have basically a cube, or what I call the cube, which is parking that's more in the back. And as you look at the cube, we have the potential to build right there and to take care of everything that we had talked about before with regard to enhancing our Upward Sports Ministry, but also including other ministries that we don't have yet. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Now, this is basically gives you an idea of where we're sitting right now. You can see kind of in the center, in the 4s and the 5 and 6, you can see the location that we're at. And then, of course, you can see that there's this big lot. And even in the mornings where we've been absolutely packed to the hilt, for example, when we had Shane and Shane here, most people were not actually parking there. They were parking with what was contiguous to the building. And that's what kind of got at least in my head, I was like, I think I have an idea here. And the idea would be, let's enhance the ministries that we need to enhance, that we need to make some more space for, but also if we could do it in a more cost-effective way. That ultimately was the goal. And also to include building more into the community relations that we've already been establishing with the building that we currently already have. So that's what I wanted to speak to tonight. And so if we could take a look at the visual, our friends at Mako kind of mocked this up. Right now what we have is we have the one court over here. And we've been doing some pretty incredible stuff on that court. One, it's not just upward, but as Tiny and Anna, and they're really the ones that do the heading up of the Upward Sports Ministry here. Aside from the year where we flooded and literally didn't have a floor in there, we're having to turn families away from the ministry every year. It's also not just the case that we're going to be doing Upward Sports basketball. We're going to begin volleyball next year, Upward volleyball. So that's why we started looking at, is there actually a need? And the answer was, yeah, actually there's a need. We're out of space. We've had to shut down enrollment, and we've had to turn down families every single year because we run, and to the credit of Tiny and Anna, we run a really good Upward Sports ministry here. So how would we do it? Well, we would take the current location, we would build on it, and what you see here is we have, on our current location, we have enough space to put 3 more full courts, but also a welcome area, a foyer area, and a concession area. You can also see that there's the capacity for showers. Now, Matthew and I talked about this at length. One of the reasons that we need the shower area isn't just because people stink after sports. It does include that, but it's more than that. We are a disaster support in terms of the Texas Baptist Men. We're one of the sponsor churches for them. And if they needed to locate out of our church, it would also be a place where, I hope we never have to use it, but it would be a place where they could also take showers as well. Or if they're just in the area and they're going to be working in Houston or something like that, we're a place that's going to be a potential host for them. So that's one of the reasons that we're given a rationale for something like that. The courts, they kind of explain themselves. Over the last several years, one of the things that I wanted to do was to enhance the footprint of our community relations with the current facility that we have, and we've definitely done that. For example, we've partnered with Kingwood Revolution Volleyball. Sports Ball just walked out of there, but we partner with Sports Ball. Home Run Ministries is out of here. The Lake Houston Conquerors are out of here. Blueprint Basketball, Hart, LaGarza Sports Camps, Premier Martial Arts, Kingwood Park High School has also come into the place. Excel Volleyball, Puka Basketball has been here. Legacy Schools, and Sports Prep. And that's just to mention a few. These community relations matter to me. We want people coming into the facility. One of the reasons that we want that is in what we call non-ministry use time. So for example, during Upward, we shut it down. These people aren't here during that time because we use it completely up. There is no time left for it to be used. But in non-ministry use time, we're leasing the facility out. And with that, we want the money that we're leasing it out for basically to help offset the operating expenses of the facility. So it's kind of a win-win. One is you enhance your community relations, and number two, it helps offset the expenses. With what we're looking at here, I was mentioning this, we're already tapped with what we can do with Upward Basketball. We're on the beginning of Upward Volleyball. You know, cross your fingers on that, but I think once we start and we get it going, it's going to be good. In talking with Kingwood Revolution, one of the things that they mentioned was, because we're talking about, Tiny, correct me if I'm wrong, we're wanting to start the volleyball part like in the summer, and we want to have the partnership with Kingwood Revolution so that the kids there can come over and help coach in this thing as well. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the two. Two of the courts, we would have the capacity to do like indoor soccer, something I would kind of hand off to Tiny there. But another thing that we would like to do is to put the markings down so that we could run pickleball out of this as well. I had to talk with Sherry Ling now about that. She's pretty intense, y'all. But there are groups both in our church and in our community where that's a huge thing. I've played it exactly one time. It was a lot of fun, didn't know what I was doing. But this is not just meant, the reason I bring this up is it's not just meant for Upward. It's really not. It's meant for more than that. What I would like to see is more enhanced community relations in, for example, offering recreational sports for the adults in our community. Men's recreational basketball leagues. Volleyball is already they're going to be kicking off here tonight. They max out the space on a normal Sunday night. They need more space, and that's good for what we're doing. But I just wanted you to see what it is that we're looking at. So we're looking at the 3 courts. Ms. Francis, I'll go ahead and answer this. The stands are already there. I hope that you can see those, but there's a place for you to sit. I know that you talked about that before in our previous meeting when we were considering something else. But this is basically what it would look like. You have a family area, and then you have the sporting area. If you could flip, I also want to see the outside of it as well. Oh, and by the way, we'll make this available on the website so that you can go and take a look at it. This is kind of a mock-up. Can I get the colored mock-up? Did we get that to you? Is it there? Do what? Was it already up there? Because my back was turned. There's 2 colored ones? Okay, my back was turned so I didn't see it. When it comes to the actual building itself, this is what the exterior of the building would look like. We want, obviously, we need it to match building to building for the area. We want them to look pretty much the same. So there's going to be a cohesiveness, and there's going to be an aesthetic quality that we want on the exterior that's going to look good. So while the interior of the space is basically going to be wide open, there's not going to be offices out of it, nothing like that. We'll run all the operation out of the existing facility. We want that to make sure that in terms of the look and the feel, and especially for the reasons of the HOA, we don't want there to be any problems there. We want it to have a really good look to it. You can obviously see some of the differences in what we're talking about here. One is we're not talking about building on North Park. And what that would mean is, and something that I'm throwing out before us today, is that we just sell the land on North Park. And we use the money that we get from the sale of the land on North Park as the seed money for what it is that we do here. Matthew and I have been talking with Mark Wimberly, who brokered the deal for Covenant Prep. Covenant sold the northern tract of land to a development group, and so they're going to be building over there. And in visiting with him just about what the process looked like, I think they were able to get something like $3.8 million for the sale of the northern tract. If I'm off, it's not by much. He was estimating that we would get somewhere in the range of $4 to $4.5 million for the land that we have. That's an estimate, but it's an educated guess based on the deal that he just brokered. But we thought, if you just went through it, let's at least talk to you about it. And that was what he came up with here. If you're curious what it would look like to build on the existing property, it would look something like this. And obviously, you have to flex a little bit. You know, if you're talking about per square foot, that can range from $180 a square foot to $200 a square foot. And that's where your fluctuation will come in and what the cost would be. So the difference in funds needed to build here would be somewhere in the $2 million range. So I'm just putting that out. So if we sell the land and we say, what would the difference be? It would be about another $2 million to build what it is that we're looking at here. Now, just to keep some things in mind, when we were talking about building over on North Park, we were talking about $1.5 million basically to clear the land off. And that's why I was saying I think that there's some distinct advantages for us to consider in this possibility. Let me just talk to you about a couple of those. Here's one. One is the obvious, is that it's more cost effective. If we were talking phase one of building over on North Park, not just the knocking down of the trees for $1.5 million, but it's more cost effective because what that was going to be totaling was somewhere in the $10 to $12 million range. We're going to offset a lot of the cost of this by the potential sale of the land. That's something I think that we should consider. The second benefit of this approach would be that it centralizes the entire operation here. So rather than having two locations that we would be operating out of, both here off of Kingwood Drive and then up off of North Park Drive, we literally centralize the entire operation right where we're at. I think that's a distinct advantage as well. But also, it gives us the opportunity to continue to enhance the community relations that we've already started. Like I said, those were some things that mattered to me. I want the building to be occupied. I want the building to be establishing good community connections and relations. And that's something that Matthew's been great to partner with me in making those connections and bringing people into the place. And it's beyond just the court. We're talking about schools that are meeting out of here as well and using our classrooms in times that we're not using it. We love that stuff. We love the fact that Home Run is here on a Friday. A couple of years ago, I'll admit, I would have been leery about this. And the reason is because, a couple of years ago, I was taking a really hard look at our footprint. Who are the people that we're reaching? And a couple of years ago, our reach was, honestly, it was pretty limited. If you just took seriously what was getting from the Union Baptist Association as well as others, you could take where we're at physically, and you could go a little over 2 miles, and almost everybody that was either coming here or was visiting here was within that space. That's just not the case anymore. We have as many people that are visiting from Humble and Atascocita as we have visiting from Kingwood, and I welcome that. And the other thing to speak to is that most of the people that are visiting us right now are not coming from another church. If you take a look at those that are actually filling out a Connect card or reaching out to us online, most of the people, when they talk about their current affiliation, they say none. And those are the people that we wanted to reach. Our plan was never to grow our church by cannibalizing other churches. That just was never the plan. We want the other churches to flourish because honestly, we need our churches in this community to flourish, especially if you listen to what I was talking about this morning. We are mostly unchurched in Kingwood, Texas. So I want all of the churches doing really well. So again, I just wanted you to see what the possibilities would be. I wanted you to see what the advantages to this approach would be. It's something I think in the coming days that we need to prayerfully consider, and that's what I want us to do. I want us to just go and to pray, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to go all in on this. We just are. But I'm game to go all in on this. If this is something that we're already seeing in a ministry that is succeeding, this isn't a if you build it, you hope they come. They're already here and we're turning them away. Then this is something I think that we seriously need to consider. So with that, I hope you have kind of the big picture of what it is that we're talking about. As I met with our long-range planning committee, they were in agreement that this was the way forward. This is the way. But I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to have kind of a picture in your mind's eye of what it is that we're talking about. And we can take some questions for tonight. I'm sure that you have a few. There's a mic.
What time frame are we looking at?
So no, next summer is when Upward Volleyball starts. Nothing about that depends on this at all. We're going to start that from scratch. So Lord knows how many kids are going to sign up for that, you know. So when it comes to the time frame, one is if we vote on the sale of the land, that's going to take a while. That's not the kind of thing where you just go in and say, do you want to buy it? Sure. How much? This. And then you walk out next week with the cash. My guess is from head to toe, that's going to take almost a year to finalize just the sale of the land. And then what we would do in the meantime, it's not dead time, by the way, because what that would mean is we're not laying a brick out here. It's just not going to happen. We're going to be focusing on the sale of the land, the procuring of the monies from the sale of the land. What we do in the meantime are the kinds of things that we can actually do. And what that would mean is we need to start talking with the city. We need to start talking with the HOA. We need to, when you start talking about the licenses and those kinds of things, we would need to begin those conversations. The other thing that we would need to begin is the establishment of a capital campaign team and get to work on basically raising the difference. So when it's time to build, we're ready to go with as much as possible that we can in that time. But it's going to take at least a year just to sell the land. Does that help a little bit, Rick? Yeah? Okay, good. Jim, what's up, man?
I recognize we wouldn't be building for a while if we were doing this. But
Yeah.
right now, building prices are sky high. I work in an office that does some of that, and we are facing huge percentages. The cost estimate that you have, what does it assume for the future? Because this obviously a little bit down the road, but what are your assumptions as far as what costs are going to be like when this would be actually built?
Yeah, so the cost assumptions were the ones I gave you. Is it's based on a per square foot of $180 to maybe $200 a square foot. That's how we were coming up with the number that we were. When I say we, I'm talking Mako, the people that we were partnering with. The facility itself is 32,842 square feet, something like that. And so that's how we were getting the cost range of what we were talking about. And that was the estimate that Mako gave us like this week. So I don't know if that helps, but that's where we're at. As far as future projections, those are the things that we don't have any control over.
Yeah.
What's the cost of wood going to be in 2 years? I don't know that I have an answer for that question.
Well, at that part,
I mean,
it's what it's going to be. I'm just curious what they put forth in their pricing this time. Did
Yeah.
they make some assumptions that prices were going to be like they are now, or prices might come down? They might come down. I don't.
Yeah, they might come down.
I'm just curious where their assumption, where their cost basis was.
Yeah, I don't think. Were you say something? Yeah, I mean, yeah, as far as the future, they didn't give us any indication of that. It's right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Next.
Hey, Bob.
I'd like to kind of address a more basic question here. Before we purchased the property over on North Park, our congregation here, I mean, the sanctuary was almost full every weekend. And we actually had a parking lot ministry where we were hauling people to and from
Riverwood.
Riverwood, and this project will take most of those, many of those parking spots up, which were always full during that period of time. And you mentioned not cannibalizing other churches. I don't want us to cannibalize ourselves. I know a number of people attend or don't attend here, are remote because of COVID. But hopefully those people will come back, because the growth of our church and the vibrance of our church is having people in face-to-face contact primarily, unless they really can. And I'm just wondering where, I don't see that we would have enough parking spots in this horseshoe, as you described it, to have many more people, if that many, that we have right now. And I think that's something we should have a contingency. If we can negotiate a long-term agreement with the middle school to park over there, then we can, that was an okay thing. It was kind of inconvenient, but we had little shuttle buses or whatever they were going back and forth. And it was okay. But otherwise, I think we're going to limit ourselves to basically, it looks like, I don't know, maybe the number of people in the sanctuary on a given Sunday that we have now. And if we go to multiple services, that doesn't really help, because we already have 2 services, basically, with Sunday school, and the people are going to be here. So anyway, that's just
Something to think through.
something that I think we need to address before we go ahead. I am fully supportive of this type of ministry, and I was really supportive of having it where we had room to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I think we need to have a plan for our congregation also.
Right, and so, and agreed. And, you know, parking came up even in the discussion with the long-range planning, because before, that was kind of well before I was here, that was kind of a nightmare when there weren't as many spaces as we have now. And so everybody that was here is like hearkening back to that. We did reach out to Harris County, and with Harris County, again, the parking that is contiguous to the building, we had, based on the capacity of what we're at here, we had 80 spaces that was beyond what was needed for our capacity. So we did factor that in, at least with the planning. So there is that. I think we are with the detention. We're going to lose a few of those, but it's not going to be that many. Okay, it's estimated once those few spaces are, that we could have 931 in the space. But even with that, and kind of the rule of thumb, once you hit 80% of your capacity, consistently, and we still have a good number online, and that's fine. But once you hit 80% of your capacity, you need to start figuring something out in terms of additional services. So we would already have to do some planning for that anyway. But I just wanted you to hear, with Harris County, we were already beyond what was needed for this facility. For this facility. Because while we're in here doing church, people aren't going to be over there.
Does Harris County count that when they give you the permit?
Yeah. Yeah, because we're not talking about like a dual occupancy simultaneously. It would be factored in for here. Phil?
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Certainly something worthy to be praying about, because it seems like it fits within some of our ministry needs. Just a couple of questions. One is kind of a philosophical one. Do we want to sell a property to a developer who's going to do what we did not want to do in good conscience?
What did we not want to do?
We didn't want to clear the land and knock all the trees down and put something there that's not good, that's going to contribute to potential flooding.
Yeah, but if we built over there, we were going to have to do it anyway. The key now is the developers, for example, the ones that are developing on what we call the North Track that was sold to Covenant, they have to figure out that plan on the way they work the detentions as they are building. A lot of the problem and the conversation is coming because of what Perry Homes did, frankly. As you go out behind the K Park area and then they just clear cut, how many acres was that? They stripped it of, that was a lot of land, but they absolutely stripped it. And then you have like a microcell come and hit, and all that water rushes into Elm Grove, and then we get to go gut and clean another couple of hundred homes. We don't want to do that again. But part of it is they're not going to be allowed to do something like that. They'll have to factor that in as they develop. But we would have as well. So I don't think it should be an issue. But no, we don't want that either.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
You answered the question about the spaces. Water retention, we're working it right now. How does this impact the water retention plans that we're working now, and will we have to kind of redo what we just did?
We won't have to redo it. What it is, and you feel free to speak to this as well. Did you want to? Okay, I'll let Matthew speak to it.
Right.
We've actually talked about this with them as well, so go ahead.
And I guess the other question was, do we get a property tax benefit from selling, and is there a burden over in North Park?
Yes.
So there's some benefit that way too?
Yeah, there's a burden right there. So regarding the detention, what we're building right now should have been built whenever the worship center was built, whenever it was 15, 20 years ago. The difference that we're seeing now is that what you see is number 7 up there, that's permeable, or not permeable, and neither will the building. So they're factoring that into that. With that said, what they're proposing, or what they will most likely propose, is putting water vaults below the new building. So what you've been seeing at that CVS on the corner of Westlake Houston and Kingwood Drive and up and down 59, the large yellow water vaults will most likely be what is recommended by the builder, and is something that we would have to consider doing. The other option that they would give us is to run detention, or is to trench out the parking lot from number 7 to number 2, and take all that parking out and for a time until we're able to do that. So that's a decision we'll have to make regarding detention. They haven't given me a number about what it would cost to put the water vaults below the building, but I would assume it would add a significant cost based on that's not in the 180 to 200 number at this point. That help, Phil?
Yeah.
Yep.
My question in regards to Phil was, I don't know, I'm sure you guys all know, whenever it rains, the sidewalks, the green belt along the back of the building and the right side are always flooded for days.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that building this would impact that for the better, or hopefully that would not impact it worse to make it worse for us.
Yeah.
That's all gonna be taken into consideration.
Yeah, that's all taken consideration. So when we work with the civil engineers, we look at what the flood plan is for this area. And some of these places are supposed to flood, but you're right, that does hold water longer than some of the other areas. So that'd be part of the consideration. It's supposed to drain off into that overpass there, but looks like it's sunk a little bit. Yeah.
So I was under the impression that Woodridge did upwards this past fall and winter when a lot of churches weren't doing it. And so we did have an uptick in the number of families participating in that type of ministry and sports. Okay, but I'm just this short, it's just what it is. Okay, so I was just saying we had an uptick in the number of students and families participating in upwards this past fall and winter because Woodridge was one of the few churches that was willing to open up its doors and host upwards. Even though we had done it in the past, we had an increase in numbers because a lot of churches weren't willing to do that. Have we asked, or do we know if churches like Second Baptist, who I understand didn't do upwards this past year, would be willing, are going to be doing upwards this year? First Baptist, some of the other churches that also have gym-type facilities, will they be hosting upwards again this year? We're already seeing them host VBS this past summer, just like we did, and are we duplicating facilities that maybe didn't exist last fall because of COVID and their willingness to host that type of ministry? Would we be duplicating something that might not be an issue this fall, this winter, next year, that kind of thing?
Did you want to speak to it? Yeah, Tiny wants to speak to that.
All right. Good question about facility use. This last year, actually, when it came down to Upward, we've started our program. We're going to go forward. We're going to have our Upward program. Second Baptist called me, said, how are you doing this? What are your protocols? How are you getting this going? And then they started their program. So they actually had their full program this last year. First Baptist doesn't have one. So the two programs in this area are us and Second Baptist. And so those are the programs that were going on. The 1 year that we didn't have the gym, Second Baptist had a big uptick in their numbers. But overall, what we saw is when our gym was back open, their numbers were a lot lower, and they came back over here. So we're seeing a great number of the people that come in. We actually had a meeting with the Upward CEO. Was it last week? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. They came in, wanted to come here to Woodridge, see our facility, and see, hey, what's going on here? We talked to them. They said, well, there were two areas we wanted to hit on in this area in Northeast Houston, and that was definitely Second and Woodridge because of what we're seeing. We're entering in our 21st year of Upward, and so it's going great. So there's not anybody that wasn't doing Upward last year that won't be doing it this coming year. So are they willing to contribute? They already do a program over there. Upward? No, they don't, because they're nationwide. So they do that. Plus, I'm not sure we'd want them tying in that much to the building because it may be tied to things and their rules and anything that company does in the future. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy, for presenting this.
What's up, James?
It's pretty exciting. So if it's still current, on our website, to put it in the context of our mission statement, right? To delight in Christ, to develop his image, and devote ourselves to the Great Commission. That's still relevant, yes, I'm guessing? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So you compared this to developing the vacant land, and this seems like makes more sense in that sense. What I was curious about, if given our mission and what we could do with those resources, right? If there were, say, 3 other projects, and I don't know what those would be, right? And I'm curious, I'm sure someone's talked about that, right? And it's like, what are we comparing this to, I guess, in saying this is the biggest single thing that we could do to help us be more effective in fulfilling our mission, right? And in other words, I guess it would help me just to know, like, compared to what, right? This is great, it's good, but there's probably 2 or 3 other good things, and what are those? Education, prayer, teaching, whatever that is, right? And maybe you said, 75% of King was unchurched, right? So what do we do? What's the best strategy for that, and compared to what? So I'm just curious if they've talked about other projects and how this compared and how confident we are that this is the single biggest thing to fulfill our mission. Make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
I'll speak to that. First, if you take a look at the families that are coming into Upward on a given weekend, on average, 60% of those are unchurched. They have no affiliation whatsoever. And so as they're coming in on a Friday night, which is when we're having to begin the games just to fit things in, and then all day on a Saturday, we have somewhere in the range of 700 to 800 people that are coming into our building on a Friday night and a Saturday. 60% of them go nowhere. Well, they're coming here on Friday and Saturday is what they're doing. They're coming here. But that also means that their kids are also unchurched. So James, we're factoring that in terms of what's the mission of our church. It's also connecting it to a ministry that over a 20-year period we know works. It has sustained excellence over 20 years. So this is not a flash in the pan kind of thing. So we do believe that it's connected to that. All right. As for the other, what do you do to reach a community that is virtually unchurched? And I was talking with Josh Hill about this. Some is enhancing your connections to the community. We want to be in the schools more than we're in the schools already. So establishing those things, I think that's good. Strong partnerships with Kingwood, with K Park and all that ramping back up Kids Hope, which we get to do again this year, and we get to mentor kids at Hidden Hollow. Those are all great things. But at the end of the day, friends, it's us getting up and starting the conversations. That's really it. There is no trick. That's it. When you say, what does it take to reach a community? It's the church going to the community. That's it. Which is why I take time and I go and I hang with the atheists and agnostics that I do. They invited me in because I had first built the relationships with them. It took a year before I got an invitation to be a part of their group. When they said, do you want to come? I was like, when do you meet? I'm going to be there. If the studies are in the, and I'm not beating anybody up. I'm really not. You might be nailing it to the wall. And if so, great. And, Abu Ben Adam, may your tribe increase. But most people aren't. It's just a fact. Most people aren't. Most people in the churches, in our community, and around this country are not doing much of anything. When it goes to intentionally investing in the life of a person that is unchurched or unbelieving, continuing to pray for them, and if nothing else, inviting them to church. It's just not happening. So when people say, what's the secret sauce to getting a person that is unchurched and unsaved in the church? It's the same now as it was 2,000 years ago. You build relationships with people. You love them well, and you care enough about them to tell them about Jesus and to come to church. That's really it. That's really it. So again, I'm not calling any one person out, but I think we could all probably take a hard look. And I'll tell you the two groups that the Lord has impressed on me the most. One are the atheists and agnostics, right? Because I'm in their world now here, and I love getting together with them. The other is Mormons. And God has opened door after door after door for us to be having those conversations. And so when he opens it, I'm like, I'm walking through. The second you do it, I'm walking through. It's like we were talking about this morning. A little bit more intentionality with our time is a good thing. It is. And what I would hope is that we would have people that are like, not as worried about going on a mission trip to Budapest, which I love, but can you cross your street? If I walked out of my house right now and I look to my right and to my left, I think we can think of one family that goes to church. I think we can think of one. And if the studies are any indication, if you walked out of your home and looked to your right and to your left, you're not going to be much better. I don't know, that just burdens me. It just burdens me. So do I see this as really connecting? Honestly, if I didn't, here's what I would say. Sell the land, call it a day. That's what I'd say. Sell it and call it a day. But if I've got 60% of the kids that are walking into this place are unchurched, I'm like, we just brought them into the building. How great is that? And it's the same with the other community relations that we have established and the other groups that are coming into this space. And I want to say this and just brag on the staff a little bit. Everybody that comes in, and I read some of the list, but everybody that comes into this place and partners with us and is leasing the gym or whatever, they love being here because of how good the staff takes care of them. And I mostly will credit Alec and Matthew for that. They are that well cared for. It bolsters the reputation of the church, all the while enhancing our community relations. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. So I just say, press down and let's go forward. It's working. I don't know if that answered your question, James, but yes.
I don't need that. Come on.
Francis is about to yell.
That's true.
I truly don't need that.
We've got people online. It'll help them to hear also.
Yeah.
If they want to know what I said, they should have been here.
Oh,
I want to
Lord.
speak to her comment about
Yeah.
the uptick in upward. My husband and I, my family, as well as the Bazes, have been involved. Wait a minute. We're involved in upward from what year? Did we start all that? 03. So we started in 02. Every year, without doubt, we had to turn families away. Every year. There was never a year that we didn't have to say no. Some years it was more than others, and that was even, you know, when there were other programs in the community. But I do understand what she's saying about going to second and stuff. But, and like as far as the number, and I understand, but I wanted you to know that from way back when.
My husband was a commissioner in Upwards at our previous church, and then taught this past fall and winter. I don't get it. I was on the debate team, not my thing. If I had to run, for sure, but not, you know, just to save me getting out of that situation. It's not my, I don't, you know, it's not what I understand or what I do, but my husband absolutely, and my son participated this year. And so we loved Upwards in two different churches in two very different communities. Before here, we were in Westview Baptist, which is a very
Roger.
landlocked church in a very upper socioeconomic area, and loved it, and the ministry did. We didn't even have to. And my husband was a part of it, and somehow I ended up teaching cheerleading 8 months pregnant. So I understand and do see the need for Upward. Just also was on a committee at that church, and remember one of the things we talked about is when we duplicate services and duplicate things when other churches in our areas have that, or could be doing that. And so I'm just wondering how, if we're duplicating that, are there other gyms in our area that we could be contacting other churches? Doesn't necessarily have to be Baptist, but I don't know. What else is Upward looking at? But Chris was able to say apparently only 2 churches at the very, very, very front and at the very, very, very back of Kingwood offer this particular ministry. And so then I wonder if Upwards has reached out to other churches in this area. Are there other gyms that could be utilized, and have they just been asked? I don't know. I don't know.
Can I speak to that too? You know, I don't know if a lot of you know, I have 4 boys. Okay, so I have 15, 13, 7, and 3.
Hold on, Francis is bringing you a mic.
I have 4 boys, 15, almost 16, 14, 7, and 3. And so I'm in a big old boy house, and we're all about sports in our house. And then I've got this boy too, my favorite boy, and he loves sports. And you know, I'm back here having some church when Jeremy's talking about the way that you reach people, the way that you reach those who are unsaved is through building relationships. And a lot of the things that we do in this church is really wonderful, but it's kind of a one and done. It might be over a short period of time where you don't really have the opportunity to establish a relationship. And I can tell you as a mom that's sitting in the stands with some of these folks that are unchurched, you come back and you're cheering for your kids, and you're like, oh, which one's your kid? And go Billy, go Stevie. Like, you learn their kids' names, you hang out, sometimes you go get lunch afterwards. This is actually goes far beyond just having facilities that will bring in money to help offset costs and, you know, be able to, it goes far beyond the logistics. This is an opportunity not just to get people through our door, but to start establishing relationships within the church, and then saying, hey, let's go to lunch, or hey, let's have dinner Friday night, or hey, come to church, we'll sit with you. So I hope that you guys get excited about this plan. You know, I haven't learned a lot about it up until now, and the more I hear about it, the more excited I get. The goal is growth, but the goal is to reach people and to invite them into our church and share them truth. So I hope that if you are skeptical about it, that you'll continue to ask a lot of questions and continue to pray about it, because I think it's a really great move.
Jeremy, I had a question about, we were at a previous church that had facilities like this, and they had a walking track along the top that they would open up for the general community to come and use during the week. And it's just like she was saying, once you get people coming to the church, you build those relationships. I couldn't tell if that was going to be in this design or not, but I would like for it to be considered anyway.
Okay. Yeah, it's not in the design, but we can reach back out to Dwayne. Mako, that's what I meant to say.
And I'm sorry, but thank you for making sure that we have bleachers. That's important on top of my list.
Hey, I called you out on that, right?
Yes, you did,
All right.
and I'm okay with that.
I just wanted you to see it.
The other thing is, I was here, and I was one of those privileged people that got to ride the shuttle from Riverwood over here when there was no parking here. So I'm gonna agree with Bob Abbott on, you know, if this place starts, when this place starts that again, parking is going to be an issue. And I'm not opposed to riding the shuttle as long as it's got AC. But then we've got to buy something to shuttle us because currently we don't have that.
Yeah.
And my last request, if we're gonna have this nice porta-shea over there, we need one on this building.
If we what?
Either over here or over
actually
there,
didn't hear
drop
her.
off when it's
Oh,
raining.
the show. Oh, yeah. Okay, I just didn't hear you.
But you know what I'm talking about now.
Yeah, we'll send that to the people for consideration.
Thank you.
I heard you.
I was
Hey, Matthew.
curious about the awning on this location also. I'd heard that we weren't, that the building was built out and the city of Houston wouldn't let us have an awning because of our footprint on the site. But that's a detail in my mind. Yeah, I guess I was surprised to hear that there's an option to actually add more facilities on the site, but God can take care of that if that's the way He leads us. I guess my feeling was, or kind of my ponderings was, I haven't been as big into sports. I've been more of a creative arts type of person, and but I want to be on board with where God is leading our congregation. I feel more that the discussion is where's the heart of our church? You know, if getting more and more involved into upwards is what is going to reach our community, then that's the way to go. I just want to make sure we're checking the temperature of the believers that are here, and that this is what people are behind. I know we're kind of in a season right now where we're still looking for a creative arts leadership, and that I'm sure, you know, once we bring a full-time person in, we're going to have more of a boost in the ministries and the outreach for children also. So I'm taking that into consideration. Those are just some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's even why we're having the meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Ryan, what's up, man? Hey, y'all, it's Ryan Wolf.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Good to see you. Good to be back. Quick question. So I like the stat about 60% of the families who come are unchurched. Do we have other stats, like about how many people that become new disciples, or how many families like translate into church members? Just thinking about, I mean, this is a big chunk of money, and if this is gonna usher in a lot of new disciples and new church members, that sounds great. We've been doing it for 20 years. Do we have any of those kind of stats?
Yeah, and I'm sure that you can speak to this. I know that, you know, if you look at the range of the ministry over the years, there's been right at 5,000 participants here. Some of them are coming from other churches, and that's totally fine. So, for example, if a kid makes a decision for Christ here through Upward, and they're a part of Second or wherever, you know, we reach out to the other church, let them know the decision made so that the follow-up can happen. If they don't have it, we're reaching out, we're establishing connections, you know, to the family to draw them in. I didn't know if there was something that you wanted, because you're over there shaking your head. So, do you want to? Okay, hold on a second.
I don't have the exact stat with me. We have tracked it and looked into it. We've actually had quite a few guests coming this year that were in our Upward program just this last year. And we had, that I know of, 2 first graders that accepted Christ in the basketball practices. During Upward, at each game, a devotional is given before each game, and a lot of you know this, being a part of it. But also during the practices, we encourage the coaches to do that as well. Just kind of building the relationship and getting that involved. But we have looked at, I know Anna's looked at tracking that, and it's hard because those same families, we get them invited to VBS, or we get invited to something else, and so they may have first seen Upward, but getting here has been a little different. We met with someone this week that started visiting here because her grandkids were in Upward, and just enjoyed it. And so it's making a big impact from there. But as far as numbers right now, I don't have them with me right now.
Brandon, you walk into the mic, man? I am. Okay.
I just wanted to piggyback off his question real quick. Someone had mentioned that the CEO of Upward had been in and whatnot, like this past week. Did they say anything? Keep in mind, you know how dumb I am, so this is the inception of this question. Did they say, hey, listen, you're going from one court, right, to the space shuttle, right? So there's going to be quite a bit more of the community you're going to be able to serve because you have all these additional facilities, right? I assume that we're obviously not the only church doing this, right? These guys do this for a living, the Upward folks. Did they say anything about, hey, listen, when you look at such a large expenditure of capital into a new facility that's going to basically quadruple the amount of court space you have, that leads to X amount of church growth on the average, blah, blah, blah. Was there any of that kind of demographic, market research kind of stuff, or not?
We did show them the plan as just, hey, this is just a idea at this point right now. First off, we blew them away because we showed them what we had and the number of kids, and they're like, you fit everybody in here on a Sunday? On a Saturday? And we're like, we do. We have chairs. We had to show them how we load the chairs and stuff. But when we showed them the new plan, they're like, this is going to be tremendous. You're going to have so many more people. But they did not say, okay, it's going to translate into this many people coming. They knew it would greatly grow our program. They know the guys the second they were going there after they met with us. But it was the CEO and then our local rep. And the local rep has been serving us for quite a number of years, many, many years. And so he knew where our program had been. He knew if we built something else and added to that, how much larger it would be. The new program that Pastor Jeremy mentioned a while ago with volleyball, that's a big thing that they're kicking off right now. And they're actually starting with softball and baseball too, but we're not putting those fields out here just yet because we don't have those rooms. But for volleyball, it's going to be huge in that aspect as well. But he didn't have any market research on what that was going to impact or anything like that yet.
Okay. Just my only thought is we ought to ask. I don't know if they have it or not. They may look at us like, you're looking at me right now, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But it may kind of like help. It helps me anyway, who's very ignorant as how Upward works, right? To be able to draw a line between, hey, if we're going to, spend this kind of money, this is what we could kind of see long term as a vision for our church. So
sure, that was a great question.
Thanks. And you're a Razorback fan, Brandon, and so don't they focus on basketball?
That's an act. Well, I'm a Red Raider. I'm not sure what we focus on. So, I think the conversation that I've heard tonight is mostly around Upward, but I think one thing that just a comment that I also would be interested to hear your thoughts about, and that is that this is not an Upward gym. This is God's gym. And I know where I came from and where I grew up, I grew in the White Rock Christian Athletic Association out of Dallas, Texas. And there were a group of churches that belonged, that we played basketball against each other. We played baseball against each other, all the way up to men. And I can remember after I graduated from college, I played in a basketball league, and I took my roommate who wasn't saved to play in this Christian basketball league. And so it wasn't an Upward league. I just don't want to be confused to the fact that we seem to be talking and getting caught up a lot about Upward and Upward this and Upward that, which is a huge ministry, which I support completely. But this is God's gym. And I would be interested to hear also other plans that you even can visualize and vision that this community center could lead to even greater things, to answer the question that was asked a while ago about what else can we do with all this money and how do we do it? I mean, other than just Upward. So.
Yeah, and I was trying to speak to that to begin with. I said it's Upward, but it's more than Upward. One is it goes to something of just kind of family life, stuff that we do together. My hope is that the thing is open pretty much all day. In the summer, we're bringing in camps, basketball camps, volleyball camps, as much as we can do to drive people here to maximize the use of the space. I think that's a good thing. But when we're driving people in here for those things, it's basically what an Upward would do. It's, since you're here, we're going to be talking about some things. So when I was saying it's Upward, but it's more, notice I was saying, you know, I was wanting like men's recreational basketball leagues going out of this place. Enhance the volleyball stuff that we're already doing on a Sunday night, and they've maxed the space out. A lot of the people that are in there on a Sunday night don't go to church. They just don't. Now we have a couple of them that started with volleyball that are now in here and worshiping with us, but a number of them don't. They're going to be over there here in just a minute if they're not already over there. So to see everything as kind of a wing of an outreach of what it is that in some ways we're already doing and we're already seeing works, if that makes any sense. Does that answer your question at all? It's more than Upward. It's certainly not less. But it's got to be a part of it, right? Yeah. Miss Denise, how are you?
I'm good, but it breaks my heart to hear that we have turned people away every year because we didn't have room for them. That breaks my heart, and I wonder, is there any other ministry in this church where we have had to turn people away because we didn't have room? We have people coming to our door, and we're all about outreach and reaching the community, and they're coming to us, and it breaks my heart that we're turning them away. And we've done that every year, and I just wonder, is there any other ministry that matches that?
Not like this.
And that's all I have
No,
to say.
we can answer that. Not like this.
I have another answer to that question too. Some of our ministries we have to turn away. Like Kids Hope, they have tons more kids that need mentors than we ever have. So, which kind of touches on what I wanted to say. You know, you think about when you think about what we're going to do here, if the Lord leads us this way with the facility, it kind of connects to what Ryan Wolf was talking about with his question about, you know, we have all these people coming in, but what happens to them whenever they do come through Upwards? And a lot of the results of that are usually limited to how many volunteers we have plugged in, because Tiny or some of the other ministers or the coaches can do their devotions every Saturday, every Friday night, and every practice, but the more folks we have plugged in who are following up and being the face and having conversations and inviting folks to have coffee or lunch or whatever after a game and saying, hey, I'm from Woodridge, I'd love to get to know you, and having those conversations with folks, the more that we're doing that, the more that we have the capacity to do that, the more likely it is that we're going to see more of that fruit start to take place in our church, but that only happens if more people come in. And so, you know, as you're looking at this and at what it could be, also think about what your role in it will be as well. You know, if we build something bigger, that means we're going to need more people. And most of the folks I see in here are already pretty much, you guys, a lot of you guys are our main workhorses and volunteers. But you also represent, this is something I said to the deacons the other day, you guys represent a lot of people in your Sunday school classes who are not plugged in, who are not there volunteering. And that's one thing we need to tap into. And we try as ministers to reach out and to get more people plugged into volunteering. But we need y'all's help with that as well. Because the more we do that, the more fruit we will see. The more people in our pews who are being Christ to the community through things like this, right? These are tools. The more we'll see that fruit. And I praise God for what we could see through this.
Friends, that's actually all I wanted to do tonight. That's it. What I wanted you to see was why, and that we get to be a part of something that's pretty special. But for now, how about this? Can we pray about it? And I mean beyond today. Can you pray over this? And then what I promise is you'll hear from me about some other meetings that we want to have about this, drawing more people in to hear about it. We'll be utilizing some of the Sunday school time for this. And then after that, there is only so much foot dragging I want to do. I'm like, it's time to go. It's time to move. It's going to be a slower process anyway, between the sale of the land and permitting and all that stuff. That's going to take time. Good news, we'll have work to do in the downtime. So with that, if there are no other questions, can I pray for us? And thanks for coming. Appreciate you a lot. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for our church. We give you all the praise. It is just as Tiny was talking about this morning, over 50 people just between camps and things coming to know you. We give you praise for that. I thank you for every person that is here. I thank you for every person, honestly, in a part of our church that isn't even here, but excited about the possibilities of what we're talking about. But we are leaning into you, that you would give us wisdom and clarity to do what is your good and perfect will. We don't want to be apart from that. We don't. And so as we commit this to a season of prayer and a time of prayer, I pray, God, that you would reveal that to us. The possibilities for ministry here, but beyond that, the impact that we can have on the community. We ask, Lord, in the coming days that you would speak to us and that you would ignite a fire in us to reach a community that we all know largely does not know you. And many of them wouldn't even care to know you. But we care. We do. And so I pray that you would impress that on our hearts, to be out, to be active, to be inviting, to be making an impact. And for whatever role that this has in bringing that to bear, we pray, Lord, that you would be out ahead of us, preparing the way so that this can come to pass. And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, my friends. Hope y'all have a great week.